In a world of kingdoms where classes define your status, there exists a class called Heavy Knight, focused on defense, or a tank, drawing enemy attacks to protect allies. Compared to other defensive classes, it's not very versatile because its poor offensive skills hinder leveling up, thus it's sadly known as a flawed class. Scene changes to a noble mansion, where we meet our protagonist, a boy named Elima. We see him sit down excitedly to read a book, but it's mentioned that whenever he learned or saw something new, he felt he already knew what it was. For a moment, he faces off against various monsters. However, above all this, he has a showdown with a fierce swordmaster, while two others are shown, one being a spear warrior and the other a jester. Back in reality, several years have passed, and Elima is about to undergo the vital ritual of divine blessing as the heir of the Edbogs. Among those present is his father, who tells him not to worry. After all, he is his son. The priest then begins the ritual. With a magic seal, he surrounds Elima's body, then exclaims baptism, a divine spell that will grant our protagonist a class. Elima thinks he has lived this before, but tries to remember when, maybe even before he was born. He recalls that he got obsessed with an online virtual reality game called Magic World, and this world is exactly the same. Astonished to realize he's just reincarnated, he assumes he'll be victorious this time. After all, he knows the game, so he just hopes to get his favorite class, seen as the strongest in the game. As he expresses his wish, the ritual ends, and Elima checks his stats, discovering he got the class he wanted, Heavy Knight. Very excited, he tells his father, but upon hearing this, his father overreacts, asking if he meant Swordmaster instead. Our protagonist doesn't understand the shocked reactions around him, but Elima realizes the big mistake he made. Due to the shock of his past memories, he confused how the realistic world of Magic World works. In this place, simple and powerful classes are praised for their fast growth, but those like Heavy Knight, which take too long to develop, are looked down upon because no one has tracked their progress properly. Elima is nervous about this, but his father takes his hand to confirm what he said, and upon seeing his Heavy Knight class, demands to know why his son has something so pathetic. On top of that, his stats are low overall, and let's not even talk about his attacks, as none stand out, labeling all this a defective class. Elima asks him to calm down and tries to explain its advantages, like the huge health and defense points that no one else has. However, the father ignores all that and hits his son in disgust. Everyone else watches the scene in fear. The only good thing is that it wasn't done publicly, as that would be the family's biggest shame. Then they hear footsteps approaching the hall. A black-haired woman with red eyes and armor. Everyone comments on how beautiful she is, though some wonder who she is. We're told she is the daughter of the Zedbag's secondary family, a childhood friend of Elima. Due to status, she and Elima haven't spoken in 5 years, but now she has come to perform the divine blessing ritual. The king allows her to continue, but all this feels off to Elima. When the ritual starts, everyone falls silent, and when it ends, Malice sees her stats, finding she got the class of Swordmaster. This stuns everyone, even more when Malice apologizes to Elima for having claimed all his talent. This was his bad feeling, that the daughter of a secondary family would get what should be his, worsening his father's attitude. But the opposite happens. He immediately praises Malice for her class, declaring she will now be his daughter and future heir. To make matters worse, Malice laughs at Elima, saying he could never bear the burden of being her heir. With that, the king orders Elima to leave. After this huge disappointment, he no longer considers him his son, as a Heavy Knight only brings shame to the Zedbags. Everyone present sides with the king and Malice, praising his wise decision and leaving Elima alone. He tries to reason with his father, explaining that with his class he could be the strongest of all. But his father doesn't want to listen, ordering him to get out and never show his face again, warning that if he repeats his surname, he'll be executed. With that, he leaves with Malice, who, like a total brat, keeps laughing in his face. Later, Elima is kicked out of the mansion, and the butler apologizes for not doing anything and gives him some coins to survive, while Malice watches him from the window. Yes, such a disgrace. Scene shifts to the city of Rondal, a place known for its abundance of adventurers. Among various groups, we see a blonde named Till, quite famous. On another side, there's a small, charismatic jester, excited about taking on quests. However, the other two members of her group, a redhead and an albino, treat her with disdain, which discourages the jester. At the same time, our protagonist arrives in the city. After renting a room, he sits on his bed thinking about how terrible his father is for making his life a nightmare. In the end, he lost his home, his family, and his life. But looking on the bright side, he recalls he still has the heavy knight class, the strongest in this world. After this thought, he surveys his surroundings, realizing that the story of this world, its environment, and even the city are nothing like the game. For this reason, he decides to investigate further. First, he tests his class and skills, checking his stats, hoping the heavy knight class is still overpowered. One by one, he reviews the panels, confirming everything remains exactly the same. Following this, he thinks about the skill tree, explaining that this helps decide in which branches to invest skills. He currently has 5 skill points left, the initial bonus points granted upon obtaining a class, and then earns 1 more per level. He mentions it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that assigning these points determines a person's fate. He then explains there are 2 types of skills, fixed ones for each class, and randomly assigned ones when creating your character. Among the skills to choose, the Heavy Armor Oath is the only fixed skill, considered the worst tree for heavy knights. However, it's actually decently strong but somewhat tricky to use, and many of its skills have limited applications. On the other hand, Defensive Boost is a very useful tree, though it doesn't grant any skills, only increasing defense. Lastly, there's Basic Fencing, which evolves into Advanced Fencing with special items, but only when it's maxed out. Without overthinking, he assigns the 5 skill points to Heavy Armor Oath, immediately leveling up that tree, gaining 10 additional defense points and a new skill, Wall Reflection. Alima gets excited seeing this, believing everything will work out. In a scene change, we see him well-equipped at the forest's edge. Determined to start his life as a knight, he ventures into the forest. After several minutes of walking, he arrives at a beautiful lake with a relaxing view. After relaxing for a moment, he decides to continue along the winding forest paths until he suddenly hears something rustling in the bushes. Just then, a frog hops out of the bushes. When he sees it, Alima checks its stats, but at that moment, the frog leaps to attack him. He also prepares by sheathing his sword, but instead uses his wall reflection skill, creating a barrier that defends him and attacks the frog, swiftly defeating it. As a result, he levels up from level 1 to level 2. We're told that wall reflection is a common skill that nullifies any melee enemy attacks, dealing damage equal to the user's defense. From the frog, he receives a level 2 magic stone. This isn't worth much, but he keeps it just in case, until he hears someone calling for help. Alima runs to find them and immediately encounters the adventurer, also noticing the forest is infested with frogs. At this, Alima says he'll take care of it. The adventurer, who was running for his life, asks if he's sure he can handle them all, even imagining Alima is famous for being so confident. But Alima replies not at all, admitting that he just leveled up for the first time in his life today. Hearing this fills the adventurer with despair, and obviously, how can you trust your life to someone much weaker than you? It makes no sense for a newbie to defeat so many monsters, and even the heavy armor he's wearing won't protect him from them, exclaiming it's better to run while they can. For his part, Alima remains very calm, mentioning that wall reflection isn't a perfect skill. As previously explained, the damage the wall inflicts while defending equals the user's defense points, so your defense must be greater than the enemy's attack to defeat it. If that's not the case, the wall's effect doesn't activate, leaving you unprotected. The adventurer continues urging him to run until all the creatures launch an attack on Alima. He mentions that wall reflection can be ineffective and dangerous against very powerful enemies or unknown creatures. However, as someone reincarnated from the game, he knows all the creatures, so surprisingly, wall reflection nullifies the attacks of several frogs, defeating them one by one. With his game knowledge, he prepared in advance by boosting his defense with equipment and skill tree bonuses, allowing him to take on dozens of frogs at once. All of them fall before his powerful wall, and the adventurer obviously can't believe his eyes. Trembling, he asks how he could manage so many frogs and who the heck he is. Alima replies with his name, but hesitates at his surname. Recalling what he was told, He must not say his last name or he'll lose his head, so he simply says he's Elima, the Heavy Knight. As all the frogs disappear, Elima's level rises from 2 to 8, and he gains the title of Unbreakable. To verify this, he checks his stats, confirming the system works just like in the Magic World game. The adventurer he saved introduces himself as Harris and shares his story, explaining he was told he had to reach level 3 on his own to be accepted into any group, so he's grateful. Elima responds that it's not necessary, as he also leveled up, but he does plan to keep the magic stones. For Harus, that's fine, and he asks what Elima thinks about teaming up, since they are both low level and no one wants to trust them with solo missions. His defensive class makes him less likely to be accepted. This reminds Elima of his father's reaction upon discovering his class, but to Harus, Elima is incredible, and he believes they would make a great team, promising to change the others' opinions too. However, the Imus prefers to go solo. Harus doesn't understand, since it's clear his class is defense, and he'd struggle to level up alone. Still, the protagonist doesn't listen, and, though he apologizes, agrees. He explains that defensive classes excel when drawing enemy attacks and protecting allies, but if he drags a group along, he'll have to share experience, which doesn't fit how he wants to level up, as he also wants items, skills, and titles. Plus, he can't waste time with those two tagging along. After this, Elima continues on, while Eris tries to convince him, but as expected, the Imus just ignores him until he suddenly stops and turns around. Eris looks a bit confused. Then looking up, they notice something strange stalking them. Suddenly, a giant spider drops from the trees and rushes at them. Eros falls to the ground, paralyzed with fear. The Amos, for his part, checks his stats, discovering it's a Haring dive that doubles its current level. Noticing the clear disadvantage in level and skills, like the slowing poison and flaming claw the monster has, the Amos thinks of different ways to neutralize it. However, they conclude that none of their defenses are useful. Yeah, what bad luck. At that moment, Aru gets up and, despite his fear, offers to buy them time. The Amos notices this and reassures him as he approaches the monster. With Aruus shouting, the Imus opens his stats and improves his branch with the points he earned. This is how he gets the disarm skill, allowing him to temporarily reduce an enemy's attack by 20% when he strikes, kicking off the combat. The spider leaps at him, but the Imus dodges. Once again, the spider starts rolling and bouncing between trees before it lands with its legs stuck. The Imus evades the attack, and while blocking and deflecting blow after blow, he mentions that he knows its attack patterns and range, so he's sure it won't go down easily. The spider lifts its leg and strikes the ground, casting a spell with a magical circle. From above, it prepares a second spell and targets our protagonist, attacking with a poisonous ray. However, the Imus has no plans to dodge. As a tank, he intends to absorb it. The spider fires and manages to push him back slightly, but at that moment, the Imus uses disarm on it, successfully cutting off one of its eyes. In theory, that cut didn't hurt the spider, but at least it should reduce its attack. This also angers the monster, and it prepares its flaming claw attack. Aris, worried, shouts for him to dodge, but it's too late. The Imus stands completely still and takes the full impact of the claw. Aris sees this without any hope, but through the smoke, the protagonist starts walking out completely unharmed and without a scratch. He explains that the poison ray costs 7 magic points, the flaming claw 5 points, leaving him with 4 magic points remaining, so now the spider can only fight up close. It tries to attack, but Elemis uses disarm again and manages to cut it. With this second disarm, the spider's attack is reduced by 40% and Inquebrantable boosts the defense by 10% by holding the same position, making things more even. Given the initial level difference, the protagonist had to overcome it through sheer knowledge. His next plan is to put some distance, stand firm, wait for the spider to attack, and use wall reflection, achieving victory. After defeating it, his level rises from 8 to 12, though the system alerts him that for now, he can't add more points to Heavy Armor Oath, but automatically the Oath levels up to 15, gaining the Repel skill. With this achieved, he finally gets all the basic skills, making me wonder how his ultimate will be. Arust again asks what the heck he is, since he just saw him defeat the spider solo. However, our poor Limus ended up poisoned, so Aruus takes him to the city. Once there, they bid farewell. the protagonist going to rest. However, he has nightmares about his father and wakes up remembering how Malice looked down on him. The next day, Imus goes to the Rodalm Adventurers Guild to register as an adventurer, seen inside the guild asking to sign up as a rank 1. Nearby, other adventurers overhear him. One of them laughs upon hearing he's a heavy knight, but Elimus ignores him. Having completed the registration, we learn that there are 7 adventurer ranks, from F to S, and to enter a dungeon, one must be at least rank E. Additionally, it explains that his rank limits the points he can add to his class branch, so he plans to level up as soon as possible. At this, the other adventurers laugh, thinking he's looking for a group. The receptionist, a bit awkward, explains that not many groups look for squires, so it will take time to find one. The Amax reassures her, and, pulling out a magic pouch, asks to exchange his magic stones. Seeing such a large amount of rare stones, everyone there is surprised, but they assume he's cheating. Elimas simply ignores them, feeling ready to start his new life with funds for his adventure. First, he asks the receptionist if there are any promotion missions available, to which she hesitantly replies yes. We then cut to a cemetery where a group of adventurers is gathered, including our protagonist, an old man with a beard, who questions if he really defeated an Aryan Dipe and plans to teach him a lesson that night. Amos, listening in, stays quiet, holding back laughter, thinking how could he have such bad luck. But if you made it this far, comment the word spider to let me know. Here on screen, I'll leave you with these 2 cool videos, just like the person watching this. See you next time. Take care, drink water, shower, and bye-bye.